What if the story you were told about your sister's disappearance was a lie? On May 17, 2001, 17-year-old Alissa Turney left school for the last time. By evening, she was gone. Her stepfather told the police a strange story, but the truth behind Alissa's disappearance is far more twisted than anyone imagined. And as the investigation unraveled, it revealed a story of obsession, control, and betrayal that still leaves one haunting question. Did Alissa ever really run away at all? May 17, 2001, last day of junior year at Paradise Valley High School in Phoenix, Alissa Turney, 17, spent the morning at school and the afternoon with her stepfather, Michael Turney. By evening, she was gone. Michael told police she left a note saying she was heading to California to live with an aunt. That note became the entire foundation of the case. Her phone, makeup, and car were still at home. Friends said she hadn't mentioned leaving. Despite those details, police treated it as a runaway situation. No urgent searches, no media blitz, just a missing file slowly fading into the background. Years later, those early choices would come under fire. There were interviews never conducted, evidence never collected, timelines never fully confirmed. For Sarah Turney, Alissa's younger sister, the lack of urgency was more than a mistake. It was the beginning of a fight that would last decades, a fight that wouldn't gain real momentum until the day she opened her phone, hit record, and spoke to the internet. Sarah was 12 the morning her life shifted forever. She remembered the sound first, her older siblings whispering down the hall. Then the sight, Alissa's room, messy in a way it never was. Clothes scattered, the bed unmade, a note on the dresser, and no Alissa. For years she held on to the runaway story because believing it hurt less than imagining the alternative. But the small details wouldn't stop gnawing at her. Alissa's phone was still on the dresser, her makeup in the bathroom, her car parked outside. If she'd run away, why leave everything behind? Time kept moving. The case quietly reopened in 2006 after a prison inmate claimed to know what happened to Alissa. That tip led nowhere. Files went back on the shelf. Then came 2008. Police raided Michael Turney's home. The same man who raised Sarah, the same man who was with Alissa the day she vanished. Inside, they found more than 24 homemade pipe bombs, silencers, and a manifesto that read like a blueprint for violence. Michael pleaded guilty to possession of destructive devices and served time in federal prison. He was released in 2017. None of it answered the question Sarah had been asking since she was 12. Where's Alissa? But it shattered the foundation she'd grown up on. The father she thought she knew was no longer the man she could defend in her own mind. By 2019, Sarah Turney had spent most of her life waiting for someone else to solve her sister's case. She finally decided to stop waiting. Years of combing through police reports, family videos, and thousands of pages of evidence had given her something most cold case families never get. A complete picture of the facts, and she wasn't going to keep them to herself. That year, she launched Voices for Justice, a podcast built from every document she could legally obtain. In each episode, she laid out the case step by step, timelines, witness statements, inconsistencies, speaking directly to anyone who would listen. But podcasts have a limit. The audience grows slowly. Fight for Alissa needed something faster, louder, impossible to ignore. In April 2020, Sarah found it. Scrolling TikTok one night, she realized she could condense years of research into seconds-long clips that could reach millions. She uploaded videos showing Alissa laughing, smiling, and then the one that would make strangers' hearts stop, a home video of Alissa looking at the camera and saying, Dad's a pervert. The internet lit up. People who had never heard of Alissa Turney were suddenly invested, angry, and demanding answers. Sarah's follower count exploded into hundreds of thousands, then over 1 million. News outlets picked up the story. Police, prosecutors, and even politicians were suddenly aware that a cold case in Arizona had gone viral. Behind the screen, Sarah was watching her private grief turn into public pressure. Every like, share, and comment was another reminder that people were paying attention now. And then, in August 2020, the pressure broke through. Michael Turney, a man Sarah had grown up calling Dad, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in Alissa's death. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the case was moving forward. Sarah had taken the pain that had defined her childhood and turned it into a weapon, a voice too loud to be ignored. But even then, the fight was far from over. Going viral didn't mean justice was guaranteed. It only meant that the world was finally watching. Sarah was ready to make sure they didn't look away. For Sarah Turney, it was the moment she had fought for with every podcast episode, every TikTok post, every late night spent combing through dusty case files. This wasn't just an arrest. It was hope, tangible and real, wrapped in handcuffs. But justice, Sarah would learn, doesn't always survive the courtroom. In July 2023, the trial began. It lasted barely a week. Prosecution laid out their theory: Michael's history of control, Alissa's haunting statement on tape, a mountain of circumstantial evidence, but there was no crime scene, no body, no physical proof. The defense pounced, and before the jury could even deliberate, the judge ended it. A Rule 20 acquittal, insufficient evidence. Michael Turney walked out a free man. When he was acquitted, part of me broke all over, Sarah said later, but I still believed he's guilty. I'll always believe that. The legal battle may have ended, but Sarah wasn't finished. Months later, she agreed to something unthinkable, sitting face to face with the man she believed had killed her sister. The air in the room was electric, heavy with years of accusations and denial. Sarah's eyes locked on his. "Will I get that confession on your deathbed?" she asked. Michael's voice was steady, almost cold. "The story you've heard is never going to change. Did not molest, and I did not kill your sister." Sarah leaned in, her voice unwavering. "You're trying to gaslight me, and I'm not taking it." There were no shouting, no dramatic walkout, just a final, cutting declaration. "I feel nothing for you. I will leave this conversation and never think of you again. My children will not know who you are." It was not the justice she had hoped for, but it was control, something the past had stolen from her long ago. In that quiet, tense room, Sarah Turney made it clear she would never stop telling Alissa's story. Because even when the law fails, the truth has a way of surviving. April 2025, Sarah Turney sat in front of her phone, staring at the post button, her hands trembling. For years, every lead had felt like a cruel mirage. Here one moment, gone the next. But this one felt different. A Jane Doe had been found. Somewhere, a nameless young woman's remains were waiting to be identified. The authorities were testing her DNA against Alissa's. Sarah's breath caught every time she thought about it. She knew better than to believe in guarantees, but she also knew she couldn't keep this to herself. She opened TikTok and spoke directly to the people who had walked her through every breakthrough and heartbeat. Her eyes glistened, her voice wavered. This Jane Doe could be Alissa. Please just keep her in your thoughts. The video spread quickly. Comments flooded in from strangers who had never met Alissa but felt like they knew her. Some prayed that match would be positive so Sarah could finally have answers. Others prayed it wouldn't be her. Because hope is a stubborn thing, and letting it go feels like another kind of death. Weeks passed. No confirmation yet. The waiting was its own quiet torment. Every ring of the phone made Sarah's heart lurch. Every day without news stretched endlessly. Still, she kept posting. Not because the internet could solve the case, but because silence was the one thing she couldn't bear. She reminded her audience and herself that this fight was never just about closure. It was about truth, about ensuring Alissa's story didn't vanish into dusty files and forgotten headlines. Some people measure justice by verdicts and convictions. Sarah measures it in memory. Every shared post, every spoken name, every time someone refuses to look away. Whether the Jane Doe turns out to be Alissa or not, Sarah's mission remains the same: bring her sister home one way or another. Because until that happens, this story isn't over. Sarah Turney will make sure the world knows it. For 20 years, the world told a story about Alissa Turney that was never hers. They said she ran away. They said she chose silence. And for 20 years, that lie held. But lies cannot outlast truth forever. Through old photographs, we see the girl she was, bright-eyed, laughing, unaware of the storm ahead. We see the sister who refused to stop asking questions, whose voice grew louder with every year that passed without answers. We see the night spent scrolling through police files, the days spent speaking into a phone so the world would remember her name. There was no justice in the courtroom. The verdict left a hollow ache. Yet outside those walls, Sarah's fight has never been stronger. Every post, every interview, every name spoken into the public record keeps Alissa alive in the only way possible now. Her story is no longer buried. It is carried by thousands, and it is not finished. So the question remains, if the system failed your sister, if the truth was left to rot in silence, would you accept it? Or would you fight until the world could no longer look away? Share your thoughts in the comments section.